roots. There probably was a time when the abuses of labor were fairly great. But the labor unions work today on the idea of constraining capacity. So the number of people employed in a unionized industry is below what we would think of as the economic equilibrium. So they keep the supply of labor down to keep the price high, and what we call the externalities associated with maintaining that are really huge. Again, economic analysis, it'd be much easier to be a biologist, okay, or a chemist. You just want to know, how does this chemical react with this one? Well, you go and you get those two chemicals and you throw them into a beaker. We can't really go to Ben Bernanke and say, hey, drive down the money supply by 15% and see what happens, right? So we are reduced to looking at case studies and average comparisons and those types of things. But unionization, from an economic development point of view, over the last 25 or 30 years, has had a very negative effect. Right? So, yes?
So I'm just not sure to ask this, but with like the inflation destroying the worth of the dollar, how can you be so optimistic about the economic situation in the United States?
Let's see. I'm going to get a writing tool here.
And what can we do to protect, money that we make?
Well, I think I have a friend, Aaron, here, who he and I might disagree on this. But so if we think of it as, you've studied probably quantity theory somewhere. So what that says is MV is equal to PQ, right? And so this is a very common, this is a tautology. It's true by definition. But what M is our money supply. When you're talking about inflation, you're talking about something that's going to have to do with increases in the money supply. V is velocity. That's the number of times that a currency unit, dollar, changes hands in a given year. P is price, okay, and Q is quantity. So we looked at this and we said, okay, you've got $100 in your money supply, you've got 5 velocity, so that means that every dollar is changing hands. Well, what is the number of dollars times the number of times each of those changes hands in a period? What does that equal to? Okay, well, that's purchases, right? So we'll proxy that. It's not exactly the same as GDP, right? And what's price times quantity? So you're making, 50, or you're selling these for $50, and you've got 10 of them, right? Well, this is also a measure of GDP, right? So what this is sort of true by definition. Well, the point here is that and there's lots of debate over what's going on in the Fed, but if we increase the money supply, right, there's actually 3 things that can happen. Okay, velocity can decrease, okay, or prices can increase, which is exactly what you talked about, increase in the price level, that's inflation, or quantity can increase. And when that happens, we don't know which one's going to occur. Okay? But what we've seen massive increases in the money supply over the last 18 months, right? But what we haven't seen is any increase in prices. Right? So that's, and we certainly haven't seen any quantity effect. So what we're assuming, and what if you look at, this is well verified by the statistics, there's just lots of money sitting around. Money's not changing hands as quick, right? People are scared to react. If you buy into the idea that the Federal Reserve can control the money supply, then an increase in M, and I'm going to argue that in normal times, velocity is not constant, but it also doesn't change month to month. Okay? It changes more cyclically than seasonally. So what's going to happen is one of these 2 things is going to go up, either quantity or price, okay? And we don't know which one, okay? But it's this one going up that is inflation. My mom is on a current bent to say that, well, the dollar's lost, X% of its purchasing power since, 1972 or something like that. But you got to remember that you also got 10 times as many dollars, right? So the only people that would lose in that scenario are the ones that take dollars and put them under their mattress. So as long as you have your dollars in your house, that is, you've got a real asset, or you've got your dollars in a bank account, the argument that the dollar has lost all of its purchasing power and that's had a really negative effect for our economy, I think is fallacious. Right? What we've also observed, and this is more of a empirical observation in search of a theory than anything else, but what we've also observed is that when inflation is higher than expected, the economy actually produces more than is expected. Okay, so that Can't think of the name of the principle. Anyway, you probably don't want to know if you're not an economics student.
Well, what
So-
I'm worried about is what if the bottom falls out and
Right.
the dollar just plummets in value and the
Right.
price goes up?
So, well, the thing you have to remember is that, and that's certainly a concern. Okay, I told you, I own rental real estate, and I went, it's all in Texas, and I flew down to Texas and I renegotiated all my loans with my banker. So I'm not trying to dismiss this as being completely ridiculous, right? So I'm protecting myself against that very phenomenon. Interest rates go way up because inflation goes way up. But we increase the money supply, and we can do that as much as we want. But we can also destroy money just as quickly through the Federal Reserve. So the notion that inflation is going to go to 12 or 14%, it's probably, if that happens, it's not a monetary phenomenon. It's actually a balanced budget phenomenon. So this will be the way the government chooses to, is the United States ever going to default on its debt? Well, we're the only country, essentially, well, the only developed country. There may be some, maybe Ethiopia does something different. But anyway, and I shouldn't be picking on Ethiopia all the time. Anyway, we're the only country that has essentially 100% of its national debt denominated in its own currency. So Canada has problems. They can't print money and pay it off because a lot of their debt is issued in US dollars and euros. Okay, same for most of the other developed countries on the globe. So it's not going to be money creation that leads to 12 or 14 or 20% inflation. It's going to be the idea that the government says, hey, remember all those bonds that the Chinese bought? Okay, they gave us all those products, we gave them all those pieces of paper. We get to decide ex post what those pieces of paper are actually worth. I'm hoping that doesn't happen, but that's where I think it'll come from. Aaron?
So IMF about, was it 2 weeks ago, announced that they want to get off the dollar as the standard currency.
What's that?
And also, what's that?
International
Monetary Fund.
Yeah, international. Yeah.
Also with the price of oil is all based on the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And so if this unrest we're seeing in the Middle East would result in those Middle Eastern countries saying, we no longer accept the dollar as our currency, what would that do to that theory? Would it just throw a whole wrench in that whole equation?
I don't think so. The fact that we denominate a barrel of oil in U.S. currency is not the problem. The problem is that the reserves of those countries are in dollars. So if we change the way we measure the value of a barrel of oil, that's not a huge deal. But if the people that are holding all their currency reserves in dollars decide, I think I'm going to hold euros now. So that means they're going to take all those dollars to the international exchange markets, and they're going to sell dollars and buy euros. Well, if you're selling, of course, you're dumping supply onto the market. Well, if you increase the supply on the market, then that could cause the value of the dollar to plummet.
And with the percentage of world currency being dollars as high as it is, wouldn't that be near catastrophic?
Well, I think that we can deal with it through monetary policy, but I think there's actually a danger there. Yeah, I mean, I'm not willing to dismiss that altogether. We've just gone through a period where we saw a dramatic, sudden impact in our financial markets, right? So we're cruising along in 2007, and then bam, we just get slammed, right? Most economic changes don't occur that way. So when we talk about, we're going to migrate, it used to be that all 100% of foreign exchange transactions went through the dollar. Okay, so if you wanted to go from, pounds to lira, you had to, even though, Italy and UK are close together, you still had to take it from pounds to dollars, then dollars to lira. Okay, and that's gone away. So yeah, I think there's some danger there. I don't know that we understand it completely, but it's unusual to see something like happen in 2007. Maybe that's wishful thinking. So, anything else? No? Hey, it's a privilege to come and talk to you. Thanks so much for letting me be here. I really, really appreciate it. My email address is andy@byu.edu. So if there's anything I can do to help you, or if you had come up with another question or a complaint or a suggestion, then I would be just overjoyed to hear it. So thank you very much.
Thanks.